Hi, Prakash. How are you? It's lovely to sit down and talk with you. Let's very quickly tell the world who you are.
Hi Jeff. As always, it has been nice seeing you. Thank you for having me here. I have been reviewing since more than 10 years now, close to 10 years, but my format is writing. I blog. It's my website, cineoffice.com, where I write my reviews. This is probably the first time I'm doing it on mic.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's see how it goes.
All right, for sure. Well, the fun thing is always trying something new, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you, like everybody I know that works in the performing arts, no matter what side they're on, front of the camera, behind the camera, or reviewing films, do a terrible job of introducing yourself. So I'll introduce you as well. World, this is Prakash of PK Verdicts, a critic and reviewer of films here, particularly in India. And today we're going to be having a conversation about a few films, rather two films, one an English film, the other a Indian film in Telugu, but also dubbed into a variety of languages. And we're going to just talk about the two films, how they are, what we thought of them. And of course, also we're going to talk a little bit about the industry, we're talk a little bit about what's going on, and sort of what you think is happening and what I think is happening. We're just going to have this really simple conversation to discuss films, right?
Yeah.
Because the one thing that Indians love is movies, right? And the world loves movies, all right?
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, I'm Jeff Goldberg of the Jeff Goldberg Studio. I am a writer, director, actor, producer, and teacher of the cinematic and performing arts. And Prakash, like I said, is a reviewer and critic of films here in India. And let's get started. So how did you get into this? Like, how did you find your way into the world of reviewing films and being a critic?
It was purely by passion. Since childhood, I have been fond of watching films. I remember I have cried watching Maine Pyar Kiya in theater, but I was a school kid then, and my
Okay.
parents didn't take me. But yeah, that has always stayed with me.
Okay.
But yeah, when I started reviewing, I was writing these Nokia 3310, wherein you have limitation for 150, 200 words, in fact, characters. So my reviews were as short as less than a tweet what you tweet.
Oh, wow. And when was this? How many years ago was that?
This was almost 10 years back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you really started like way
Yeah,
back.
so it was a 2-liner review sometimes, and
Okay.
not more than 3-liner review. And from that, then I was pushed because people were liking it. I used to forward it to my circle of people,
Okay.
and then people started liking it, and I was pushed to write a blog.
Okay.
When blog was being, the in thing
Okay.
a couple of years back. So that's when I started blogging. It was a one-pager. It was on Blogspot, Google Blogspot itself.
Okay.
And then it transpired into a website, which is cineoffice.com, which I run right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So sort of like a natural outgrowth of your love of
Yeah.
cinema.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, as you've grown into doing this, I mean, it must be fascinating to sort of look back and see where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a journey. It's really nice. Your network is your net worth. So my network has really grown because of watching films, meeting people, and I am a jury also for the Indo-German Film Festival since last year.
Okay. Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you so much. So it has been really nice, and I am just unfolding my path on the journey.
Oh, that's amazing. I think the nicest thing, Prakash, apart from the fact that you're a lovely human being, I think the nicest thing to hear about in your story is how organic and natural this has been a growth for you. The idea that like somehow just a guy who loves movies, a kid who loves movies, can turn around and take that passion and start writing about them. And that can go from something as simple as, 120 words to suddenly, a blog and now a website. You're very active on social media. And, for those of you who don't know, Prakash's reviews are very, very well beheld by lots of people. They look at them constantly. And I think, one of the things that people do today in the Indian film world, when I say the Indian film world, of course, that's a huge thing because we have films in many different languages and regional cinema. But people really do look at reviews today. People really do take out time to see not just what their fellow audience members are saying, but like actually read critics and actually hear what the critics have to say. Because there was a time in India when it was just all word of mouth, right?
Yeah, correct.
It was just all word of mouth. But that's changed. And why do you think that's changed? Why do you think people are more interested in reading reviews by critics? What do you think's driving that?
I guess because of social media, this has magnified because opinions matter is what I feel, and ticket prices also matters. So
Yeah, for
one, if
sure.
you want to go out with a family for a movie, it's almost a 5,000 rupee fare.
Yeah.
So one has to be conscious, and then people follow those whose opinions matters sometimes. There are paid reviews, there are unpaid reviews. My reviews have been unbiased, and I purely go by what I feel. I don't care about what box office may transpire, because sometimes your verdict may be too low, but the box office could be magnum. But that happens. That's because of the stardom. That's because of the marketing behind the film that goes in.
So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting what you said right there, Prakash, because I think that that's something that's really driving the industry today is the economics of it. When we talk about economics, of course, there's the budget behind making the film, the cost of the actor, and all the things that we hear that go on in the filmmaking process for the producer and his or her team. But there's also the economics of moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and boyfriends and girlfriends and people and husbands and wives that want to go to the cinema. Like you said, it's a really expensive thing and it's an investment now.
Yeah,
$5,000 is an investment. If you're going to go see a film at a Cineplex here in Mumbai or one of the other tier 1 cities, you're looking at maybe $600 to $800 on the tickets, maybe even more depending upon the film. And then of course, you got the car, you got the parking, you got the petrol, you got the popcorn, you got the Pepsi, you got the samosa.
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? And people want to make sure that they're taking out time to invest. So I think that critics play a really important role in kind of helping people discern and pick what they want to look at. Do you find that you have a following of people who constantly tap in with you because they like your view, your opinion? They're like, oh, if Prakash liked it or if Prakash didn't like it, that I know that I could go to that film because he said yes or he gave it a good rating where others haven't or something like that.
Yeah, so as I said, my circle is more of the people whom I know. I'm not publicly out yet as such. My engagement is not very high on social media, wherein people come and, if I say something about Allu Arjun or Ranbir Kapoor, they won't come and hit me. So that's not there. But of course, my people do connect and they see what I'm saying, and accordingly, sometimes they decide whether they want to watch the film or they don't want to watch the film. Or sometimes because of the review, they come across the film which they could have never watched or thought of watching, but they end up watching because it was a recommendation on my page. So sometimes that's also there, and you feel good. And many times people come back and say, okay, you mentioned this and I had gone to see this film and thank you so much for this recommendation. So that also happens. So sometimes, but I don't crave for that validation much. Primarily I review for my own self as well, because when I watch a film, I want to have an opinion about that. Not that I want to influence my opinion on others. Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, and that's also something else I think, apart from we all hear about certain films because they have the great marketing budget and things of that sort. But also, today people curate films in a certain way. They need to kind of sort of discover things because there's so much media and there's so many places to hear about things, but sometimes smaller films or maybe things that are a little bit less well known, they get washed out by the bigger things because they just can't afford to be as, visible. So someone like yourself, do you find that people are coming to you not only to read the reviews, but to curate films, to choose stuff?
Yes, that happens because Masan, when it had come, I mean, hardly people knew Vicky Kaushal. It was his debut film anyways. Masan was a very out-of-the-box cinema, which I really loved, and I had gone gaga about it. And there are so many films like Radhika Plays Parch, to name a few, which top my mind right now. But then, sometimes you really need a voice to, for these films to reach a larger audience.
To spotlight them.
Yeah.
Okay. And talk about that, because Indian cinema, again, it's such a huge ocean of films. And of course, commercial cinema with big backing and corporate houses and huge production and marketing budgets is able to sort of suck up all the visible oxygen on the hoardings on the highway, the TV ads, the YouTube, things like that, but there is so much more going on in the world of cinema. And do you find that people are more interested in that today? Or do you feel like there's more eyeballs moving in that direction, or where do you think it's headed?
Well, basis on what I observe, that's why they call it industry, because they have churned this industry from a silver jubilee, golden jubilee to a weekend run or a 2 weekend run or a 3 weekend run. They want to grab as much as they can on a particular weekend at the opening of the film. So there are directors who bank upon franchisee and all that. That is happening, and people are going on the nostalgic value, like films like Gadar or Stree 2. But Stree 2 still was a well-made sequel.
So you find the industry is kind of like trying to figure itself out a little bit, you know, and you feel like it's a little bit in transition.
Yeah, probably. There are very few film directors who are producing new content or good content. The reliability is majorly on either, at least in Hindi film industry, what I'm seeing is either they are making remakes or they are making sequels to their own previous films, and that is how they are trying to bank upon and get as many numbers at the box office they want to. I don't see. I see very few directors who are driven by their art of cinema or coming with the passion to tell a story. Unlike you have someone like Shujit Sarkar who would come and give us "I want to talk," which films matter, but then you see they are out of the cinemas in a week's time.
Okay. But what about films like La Pata Ladies, or this wonderful film by Payal Kapadia, All the Light We Can See? I mean, what do you think about films like that? Because independent cinema seems to be growing a lot of really beautiful voices at the moment.
Yeah, so they have a lot of storytelling through such films like Payal Kapadia's film, which is running at the festivals and has a great reception. But when it released in India, as in like when it was a theatrical release, there are very few people who have gone and seen the film. So they end up becoming a festival film, but then the takers are very less for these films.
And why do you think that is?
Maybe because people don't relate with newcomers, or though they don't want to spend on newcomers. And besides, they are not a typical masala film, and besides, their availability on OTT is what they wait for, that they will be soon available on OTT, and that is something which they can experience it at home rather than going to a cinema hall and watching.
I gotcha. Well, I mean, that's the big thing that everyone's talking about in the industry today, is sort of how OTT platforms have changed the way people are consuming content. Because it's the kind of thing where 15 years ago, or even 20, 30 years ago, before OTTs were here, and you go back a little bit further, before cable television had all the channels, cinema was really kind of the only place where you could consume content, consume a story like that. And now people have so many choices, and it's really kind of diversified and splintered the market. And that's one of the things that everyone's trying to figure out, is how to continue to make films at a certain budget, at a certain quality, but still find eyeballs and still find folks who want to come and see it. Because there are a lot of people, like you said, it's a big investment to go to the films, and hey, if it's going to be on the OTT that you're paying for anyway in a month or two, then I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with, like, do I get stuck in traffic and go watch a film in the screen where it's going to be more expensive, where I could sit at home in the comfort of my home with my family on the couch and watch it? And that's a big problem right now. And I can tell you, as a filmmaker and as somebody who is in and around the industry, also with the actors that I've had the pleasure of teaching, we're seeing a little bit of an interlude. It's a big pause in the industry at the moment, because everyone's trying to figure out how to continue to make films, be successful, but at the same time continue to make the money they used to make, right? But I think coming over to Payal Kapadia's film, or La Pata Ladies by Kiran Rao and other independent filmmakers, it seems to be a great moment for independent cinema.
Yes, it is. La Pata Ladies did well. In the same zone, 12th Fail also did really well, and it was one of the really great films. But then these films had good backings also. Like La Pata Ladies comes from Amir Khan Productions, and then you have 12th Fail from Vidhu Vinod Chopra. So the story is like, of not a masala entertainer. It's a very much a true story, which is very inspiring and well made at the same time, and it ran primarily because of word of mouth. So that really plays an important role. For the success of the film.
No, it just seems, I think another thing that everyone's trying to figure out, and of course, it's easy to say, write a good script, make a good film, right? But I think one of the things that people are trying to figure out is what's working, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does the audience want? 20, 30 years ago, it was kind of like, a film would come out, it would sort of set the benchmark of what film should be, and the next 2, 3 years, everybody would kind of make something that was a little bit similar to that. But today, everything is there's such a huge variety of films, there's such a huge variety of stories, there's such a diverse amount of visions, and it's kind of hard to figure out like what works, right? I mean, I keep telling actors I know and actors I work with that I think the only thing that's shining through in the industry in the last 10 years is that, when you look at a successful film, everybody agrees the performances are great, and I think that that's the only hallmark that you can kind of find from film to film. You take a look at 12 Fail. Vikrant Massey is incredible in that movie,
Yes.
right? These actors and the Pata ladies, are relatively new or new faces for us, much like Payal Kapadia's film, but the performances are so great. They're so realistic. They're so absolutely relatable. And you even go to masala films like Bajrangi Bhaijaan. I know it's a little bit dated now, but Salman is really relatable in that film. And you can't say that about every film he's in, but you certainly could say that about that film. And I think that this is the trend that's kind of driving successful films as well, is where we're seeing really pitch perfect, spot on performances. That's just the take I've had on it. Now, perhaps that's also because I see films through the lens of how they're made. I see films through how they're acted. But for me, I just feel like that's something that's really, really working. I don't know what you think. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That is how it is.
Yeah, and I just feel like also, one of the other things that's really changed quite a bit in the industry in the last, especially since the arrival of the OTT platforms, is people have access to so much more diverse global content. And that's really changed the game big time. And not just in terms of what they're consuming, but during the pandemic as well, that was accentuated, that was sped up, because if you went through all the Indian content that there was, you still had another 12 months to sit in your house and do nothing, right? So people started to going through Irish content and English content and French content and Spanish content and American content, and then this global thing happened, and it's really changed the perception of what people want to consume. And that's something that I think filmmakers today here within India are still kind of trying to sort out, because for a very long time, the language of cinema and the language of storytelling that was Indian was pretty untouched, And I think that when you think about Indian cinema as a genre, particularly Bollywood cinema as a genre, you start to see set pieces and tropes and ideas and storylines that are very accepted and very understood and contextually immediately recognizable to the audience. And that's obviously perfected by a guy like, of course, Sanjay Leela Bhansali in his films, Devdas, Padmavat, Baji Rao and beyond. But now, people are watching Narcos, and people are watching Arsène Lupin, people are watching Peaky Blinders and Crown, and these are very different languages of cinema, not just in terms of the storylines and the language that they're speaking, but the way they're made. The shots and the camera angles, the edits, the way they're put together are challenging audiences, and they seem to really be responding beautifully, and they seem to like it. And this has been a little bit of a big change within the industry. So I think that we're living in changing times and exciting times for our industry, to be honest with you. I think that, there's one thing that has always been true about storytellers in the subcontinent is that there's an absolute gigantic reservoir of incredible stories to tell. Everybody, even your chaiwala on the street, has a great story to tell, maybe. And I think that what we're witnessing is the evolution of the filmmaker, but still retaining that cultural seed. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out in the next few years. And we're starting to see things like, DK and Raj and DK with Guns and Gulabs and Family Man. We're seeing filmmakers who are taking those more desi Indian stories, but still finding a way to make it work in this newly developed sort of expectation on the part of the audience. And then, of course, things like Mirzapur and Patalok. There have been some really successful shows, and there have been some really wonderful filmmakers sort of emerging out of the OTT space. So I think it's a very exciting time to be making films and shows. What do you think?
Yeah, I second that thought. There are a lot of web series which are doing great, and for example, Raj and DK got the Citadel adaptation wherein they did Bunny and Honey with Samantha Prabhu and Varun Dhawan. I found it pretty mediocre from Raj and DK's, earlier what they have delivered, like Family Man. Guns and Gloves was also very great because of the 80s and 90s element. It was quite quirky and very great performances by Rajkumar Rao and Gulshan Devia. So, of course, the content has changed.
The content's evolved.
Yeah.
It's really evolved.
It has evolved.
And I think actually I can't, when I talk about Guns and Globs, I have to make mention of TJ Banu, because she's an actor I've worked with, and I think, I love her. And I just think that, again, and TJ for me is an example of, here's a young woman who is just really talented. She's just great. I remember the first time I saw her on screen in Forgotten Army by Kabir Khan. I watched that first episode, and the only thing I could see in the whole episode was her. Of course, Shavari, also another actor I've had the pleasure of working with. They both just shined for me. And the funny thing is that sometimes people will ask me, or just sort of inquire, like, how did they get there? And the only answer to that question I can really say is it's not the fact that they're lucky. It's not the fact that they have connections, because I don't know that they were either lucky or had connections. It's just that they're very hardworking people, and I think that that's something that's really wonderful to see right now. Even like a guy like Vikant Messi, or people like Kartik Aryan. It's wonderful to see talented, hardworking people emerging on the scene and really starting to draw the audience towards them. I think that's wonderful. Ishwak Singh, and there's so many new faces that have emerged in the last 5-10 years. That's really exciting, on the actor side, the director side, the producer side. I think we're witnessing the emergence of something very new here, and that's great. Not just in the commercial space, but also, again, like we were saying, in the independent space, Indian films are winning festivals all over the world. People forget sometimes that last year at the Academy Awards, India won an Academy Award for Best Short Documentary, The Elephant Whisperer, which, is a wonderful film, sweet and adorable. Something's really happening here. Storytellers are really starting to emerge in new ways. But, we can sit here and talk all day about this, and maybe in our next episode we'll get back to talking about films at large. But we're also going to talk about two films. I'm going to talk about the English film, Gladiator 2, and you're going to talk about Pushpa 2. Both are sequels. You go first. Tell me what you think about Pushpa 2. Obviously, people were really excited about it. A film that was very expected at the audience, because the first film was such a gigantic success. So tell us, no frills, no holds barred. What'd you think?
Well, somehow I didn't enjoy watching Pushpa 2. Until the first half, it was really nice, but second half was, it falls like a pack of cards. So they serve you a very good breakfast, and you have not done with your breakfast yet, and then they serve you lunch, which is not palatable. So it was bad.
Okay.
What went wrong?
Wow, it was bad. It was just
it was bad.
It was bad. It wasn't even mediocre. It was just bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's bad. So what went wrong with Pushpa 2 is, I guess, they really don't know from where to start and where to end and what to do with Fahad Fasil. He's such a great actor, and the Pushpa, the part 1, The Rise, was really awesome. It was a complete masala package entertainer, which they have attempted here also, but then what it lacks is a story. It doesn't have a story at all, and they completely lost the plot. Post-interval. Till interval, the film really delivers, and Allu Arjun is great, and so is Fahad Fasil. There is a great cat and mouse chase which is happening, and you really enjoy the banter between the two. Other than that, the film has nothing. Then it has really silly songs which pop up at any time post-interval. Of course, Allu Arjun's performance when he does the Kali song, and when he transpires into Kali and brings that element of, It's really great to watch him in that zone, but immediately after that you have a item song, and as in like with his wife, of course, but then still it's not a great watch.
Okay.
Post interval, the film really goes down, and it just Fahad Fasil disappears as a main villain, and then because they are planning a third, the Rampage Pushpa, they start introducing us the elements of the new upcoming film, wherein we see new villains, and the conflict is gone for a toss. The main conflict. I mean, the film starts in Japan. You don't know what is happening, and there's never a closed loop of that Japan element. So it's just Pushpa is like stitched by a few action pieces, few dance numbers, which are really not great, not integrated well in the film. So it comes as a big disappointment, because till interval you're watching and you're like, wow. Till interval, like, it's really a wow. So you do enjoy, other than that first Japan segment.
Okay.
You are very much into the story, and the story is a good continuation from part one. But when it goes to post interval, wherein they completely they don't know what they are doing, it comes to that point.
So it just comes apart.
Yeah, it comes apart.
And, you know, I
And it
mean,
falls
that's too bad, you know, because it's, you know, now what do you think it is? Do you think it's the directing, the writing? They just got lazy, or they're just trying to like sell you the third film already?
Yeah, selling the third film already too early, in fact, because like in one also Fahad Fasil comes like hardly in last 20-30 minutes, but then when he comes, and then they leave you at a point wherein you really wait for the next part to come, and you expect Fahad Fasil to do more. But Pushpa is like Pushpa is all about Pushpa, glorifying Pushpa, and there's no much value to Fahad Fasil post interval. His disappearance, you realize, okay, now he has disappeared, and there's a new villain, new conflict. And yeah, it just drags on for 3 hours, 20 minutes, and the film could have ended probably at the interval itself, or a little later than the interval, but post Fahad Fasil, you don't even realize. I mean, I won't be surprised that he may come back in part 3, but nevertheless, his disappearance was really bad.
Got it. So it's just like brand over story.
Yeah.
You know, they just wanted to push the Pushpa brand.
Yeah, it's a brand. They say Pushpa is a brand.
Really, no.
I mean, it's a dialogue in the film itself.
Do they actually say that? I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. They actually say it.
He hits his palm on the back and he says, Pushpa is the brand.
I love that, dude. Yeah, go for it, right?
Yeah, so people are loving that, actually. So, yeah, so what is drawing people to the theaters, I guess, is, of course, Allu Arjun's performance and the franchisee, banking upon the franchisee. That is what makers are doing, actually, banking upon the franchisee, but not giving the new element when you get the new part.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's unfortunate because, you know, Pushpa, I remember when the film came out, you know, as a matter of fact, at the time, when Pushpa came out, here at our studio, we had a colleague who is from Telangana, you know, and obviously, you know, Telugu is his thing. He loves Telugu cinema. And Pushpa was like, you know, dripping from his lips, you know. It was the only thing he could talk about. Every pore in his body was just in love with that movie. And they really had, you know, it was fun to see, 'cause, you know, films in India still can be events, you know, where, say, in the West, you know, even a big film comes along, it's not an event. It's not like, you know, the city shuts down because a film has come out, you know. But back in the 1960s, you know, a film like Ben-Hur or Cleopatra or Lawrence of Arabia, these, you know, much older films, they were like events, you know. They actually like broke the box office. It's actually really funny. I just watched Die Hard. Remember Die Hard with Bruce Willis? And I watched that movie, and that was made in 1988. I remember as a kid, like, that movie was like everywhere. And we don't really have that sort of pop anymore in Western cinema. I mean, you do, of course, from time to time, but not as much. And here, films can still do that, you know, especially regional films, right? You know, Rajinikanth film comes and everybody watches it. Dhanush film comes, everybody watches it. An Allu Arjun film, everybody watches it, you know, and that's exciting. And it's just kind of a bummer that it's a missed opportunity that they didn't, you know, devote more time to the story. And it sounds like they were just trying.
Allu Arjun has really done well. He's like very much in the skin of the character, and he takes his part. I mean, post interval also, if you see, he's very much there. What film lacks is the story, the direction. As like when I say the direction of the story, you really don't know where they are heading.
Got
And
it.
then we come to know, of course, they are heading to Rampage, but then by the time you are there, you really lose interest. When Pahad Fasil comes in part 1,
Got it.
that's the path for part 2, you are still interested and you are, okay, at the edge of your seat, wow. But over here, you start sucking.
Yeah. So it's not even. It's just bad.
Yeah,
It's not worth it.
not worth it.
Is it a don't go to the cinema? Is it wait for an
For
OTT,
me,
or is it just wait?
No, don't even wait for OTT. I mean,
Really?
For me, it
Oh,
would be a
wow.
complete skip. Of
Okay.
course, if you love Allu Arjun, you
Yeah,
end up
of course,
watching
if you're a fan
film
of
and you
his.
really want to, as a critic, you really want to have your say also on the film and you want to watch the film.
Sure.
But when you watch a good cinema, you really feel so. Till the time interval, at the interval, I was like really happy and looking forward for the second half.
Okay.
Now what unfolds, but what unfolded was like.
Oh
really
no! Oh no!
bad. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. As a matter of fact, actually, I was in New York in the last couple of weeks,
Okay.
and funnily enough, my son and I were looking to go to a movie, and Pushpa 2 was actually a choice in this small little city in upstate New York, about 4 hours drive from New York City. And my dad looked at me and said, "What's Pushpa?" And I had to explain it to him. I did not go see it because I thought, better to see it in India. So I haven't had the chance to look at it yet.
Have
But
you seen the first part?
I haven't seen the first one, actually. The last Telugu film I saw were, I always get to say these films names incorrectly, so please, everyone's going to giggle. But Bahubali,
Bahubali, yeah,
and I enjoyed them.
Yeah,
I
that
enjoyed
was
them.
great.
I actually thought Bahubali, the first part, really impressed me because it was very un-Bollywood or very un-Tollywood in that the first 10-15 minutes of the film are just action. There's no talking, there's no dialogue, and I was very impressed with like how the filmmaker created this really interesting intrigue and really brought us into the world of the character as a baby with his mother, and we understood what was at stake, but there was no talking, there was no voiceover. It just kind of was happening through the image, and it felt very cinematic. So I really enjoyed that, and I was very impressed, and I wasn't surprised that the film was such a great success. Triple R I didn't get to see,
That's
but
amazing as well.
I got to check that out because actually a few friends of mine are actually in the film, and I just haven't had the chance to look at it. But those films are like 3 hours long. You got to find the time, and it's tough to find the time these days.
Pushpa 2 is no less, 3
Yeah.
hours, 20 minutes.
Well, they got to cash in, right? If
Yeah,
you're gonna-
well, they are already. It's like...
is the film doing well?
Yeah, fastest success film.
How much already?
800 crores already.
800 crores already. But they're so loyal. They're such a loyal audience, and I think that's, whilst of course I'd like to see
I
better
wish
films.
Even filmmakers are loyal to their audience. That would have been great.
That'd be great too. But I just think it's great that in the regional cinema, Malayalam
Such
cinema.
a wafer thin plot Pushpa 2 has. Like, there's no story.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I guess they got their Allu Arjun, they got their
Rashmika Mandanna.
Pushpa, so they got their brand. But it's funny because we're talking about big brand films. The film I'm going to talk about is Gladiator 2, and I saw that, and what a great disappointment that was. For a lot of different reasons, I really wanted to see the film. Of course, the first film, which came out almost 25 years ago, 24 years ago. Ridley Scott, he never lets you down because Ridley Scott is such a great director, and so many important films have been his over the years. But again, like you said, just the plot, the story, the writing was so underbaked. The script, they followed a very classic structure. And so, if you kind of understand narrative structure, you could see where the film was going. And that's okay. When you watch a Clint Eastwood film, you know where the story's going. It's not a surprise where you wind up, but it's done in a way where you're engaged with the character, you're connected to the journey, the narrative arc is really hooking you. This just kind of felt like you said about Pushpa, some patchwork of different ideas sewn together loosely. And that was really unfortunate because, look, you're making Gladiator 2. I mean, this Gladiator, the first film, it's not that it was a great success. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It really deserves to be put in the pantheon of fantastic movies. It's right up there. It's certainly, I think, Ridley Scott's maybe best film. I mean, he's got a lot of pretty amazing filmography. But I just felt like the script was underbaked. I don't know if it was because they had too many producers giving notes to the screenwriters, or if this was the story they wanted to tell. But it just felt very patchwork in terms of story. And at no point could you kind of really like connect with the journey of the character. And the thing is, because the character, spoiler alert, is related very much to the first film, you want to root for him because you loved that character in the first movie. You loved that character that was just so larger than life, played by Russell Crowe, and it was just like, come on, and then the thing that really shocked me as well was the acting. I mean, Pedro Pascal is a great actor. Connie Nielsen's a great actor. Denzel Washington is, in my view, for my money, probably the greatest actor in my lifetime. I mean, I would say that his performance in Fences, which he directed as well, August Wilson's play that became the film, I mean, he didn't win the Academy Award for that, which is both tragic, but also not a big deal because there's no award you could give him for that performance because it's just, if you haven't seen Fences, you should see it because it's frightening how good he is, how much he is that character. It's weird because there's these moments where he kind of gets a little bit bigger than the character because Denzel can do that sometimes. If you go back and look at things like Training Day and stuff like that, he has this moment where he kind of almost gets into the land of overacting, but somehow it works and he brings you there with you. You go to that place with him. But in Gladiator 2, it just didn't work. It was a pastiche of himself. He was sort of like mocking himself. It was really weird to watch, and the character was all over the place. And this new kid, Paul Mescal, he was good. He was really good. He's playing the title role, so to speak, Gladiator 2. He's the second Gladiator. He was good, but the character was kind of one-dimensional, but that was not really his fault. That was how it was written. And the minute you figured out what was going on with the character, which kind of happened quickly, he didn't have anywhere else to go with the character. It was a bit one-dimensional. So the acting was surprising to me because the characters were underbaked and the actors just looked like they weren't, and again, I'm not picking on Ridley Scott. Who am I to say anything to Mr. Ridley Scott? But they didn't look directed. They didn't look locked in. They didn't look like they were acting in the same movie. The only person in the film who I felt really delivered like an absolutely stellar performance was Connie Nielsen playing the mother role, which she reprised from the first film. She was amazing. You felt her journey. It was very quiet. It was very internal. It was under the skin. It really worked. I thought she was fantastic. Everyone else just never lifted off. And Denzel lifted off too much. It was just very inconsistent. And then, I read something before I saw the film, and maybe that was playing in my mind, but I read that the cinematographer criticized the director for being lazy in making the film in terms of like just certain little sort of filmmaking mistakes, like having a mic in the shot or shooting things at different times of the day so the color correction wouldn't match. And I actually noticed that. It's weird, right? You're watching a film that cost several $100 million. They rebuilt the Roman Colosseum. It's not CGI. They actually rebuilt that thing. Whether or not they built it to scale, I don't know. But you don't want to make those kind of mistakes, right? These are like rookie mistakes. Those are the kind of mistakes you see in film school. And there was this one shot in particular where like they cut between one angle to another angle of the same character, and the color correction was completely different. Like it literally looked like they shot those things. One was shot at night, one was shot at day, but like it's the same, it's the same character, the same moment. It was very weird. Maybe they did shoot it at the same time. I don't know, but the color correction was like jarring. I was like, oops, that's a big mistake. So it just felt like you waited 24 years to make this movie from the first film. You didn't get the script right. You didn't get the filmmaking right. You didn't get the acting right. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And I think that was really confusing because like Push Bud 2, Gladiator is a brand that people were rooting for. That's a film that's really important to a lot of people. That's a generation-defining movie. And again, it changed films for a long time. Afterwards, a lot of people, suddenly wanted to make films about the ancient world or about Romans, or people became interested in Rome. As a matter of fact, I remember HBO had a show about Rome right after that. So there was this real swell of interest. This, I know it's making a lot of money, like Pushpa. I don't know how much money it's making globally, but I heard it made like $300-400 million, which is ridiculous. It's just so much money. But yeah, it's like, guys, like you left out three of the most important elements: solid filmmaking, solid acting, and solid story. Like those are three ingredients that you can't necessarily forget. Maybe VFX or costumes, things like that. I mean, you want to get those right too, but like those can be B grade. You can get away with faking that, but like acting, like, come on, guys, the screenplay.
You also say you don't go for Gladiator 2 as well.
I would say you should watch it in the cinema for 3 reasons, none of which have to do with the story, none of which have to do with the acting. Firstly, the spectacle of Rome is beautiful, truly beautiful. The production designers, the art department, the costume people, all of those incredibly hardworking people that are the army that make a film, they did a great job. There's this one shot where you have a Roman army facing the Praetorian Roman Guard, and this shot is just like beautiful. It's almost like Ben-Hur style or Spartacus style, wide angle lens on a hill, 2 armies coming at each other. You're like, yeah, and that, you want to see that on a screen, you want to see that on the big screen. So I think that's one reason to check out the film in the cinema. And I think the second reason to check out the film in the cinema is because today, filmmakers know that to get you to the cinema, they have to make something cinematic. They have to understand that, look, if people are going to invest that time and that money and that effort to get to the cinema to watch the picture, then it's got to, have that scale. That they got right. Those people did an amazing job. That first opening sequence of the film, spoiler alert, when you're watching the Romans attack Numidia, yeah, the scene's a little bit kind of like copy-paste from Saving Private Ryan, but a la Roman style. But, it's kind of cool to like watch a Roman battle, Roman soldiers. And it's kind of cool to see that. And I don't think you're going to get that same experience on a TV screen. Do I think you should watch it at all if you don't get to the cinema? Yeah, check it out. I think that for nothing less, there's some interesting things in the film. There's some interesting ideas. And as someone who has done a lot of research around the ancient world, this is one of the few films that you're going to watch and you're going to look at and you're going to know that all the research into creating that universe was done correctly. And that's kind of cool. You get a window into a world that doesn't exist anymore. So generally, I would say for the technical stuff and the art and the artifice and the spectacle, yes. For the film, for the story, for the acting, no. But my biggest takeaway from the film was Denzel. I'm worried about Denzel because I'm a huge fan of Denzel Washington's. And, who knows if he'll ever see something I say about him or, anything I ever do. But if he ever does, I would tell him, Denzel, you are the greatest actor of my generation, for me, hands down. There are other actors out there who I think have been as good, of course, but like consistently from, X by Spike Lee, Training Day, Anton Fuqua, The Pelican Brief, an old John Grisham film. He's just a great actor. But Mississippi Masala, another great film of his. But like, watch out. Don't do that again. Work with a director who you're going to listen to, who you trust, because maybe you guys just didn't have that rapport, or maybe you just tried something, because it just really didn't work. It just didn't work at all.
This is what happens when they are only focusing on the scale and not the story.
Yeah, maybe.
The actor becomes more important. Like in Pushpa, primarily it's the Pushpa so much that they forget everything and it's just Pushpa.
Yeah, I guess, look, as a filmmaker, I know that there's so many things that go on in making a movie that we never really know what spoils the broth or what messes up with the recipe. You never can know. I mean, hey, maybe the director wasn't feeling well. Maybe the director wasn't interested. Maybe they were having a fight with the producer. Maybe the weather wasn't good. Maybe the food wasn't. I mean, you never know what can go wrong. And films are definitely a case study in Murphy's Law. Whatever could go wrong will go wrong. You know, a friend of mine was just telling me about a film he was working on, and in London, can you believe this? The camera got stolen on set, right? A van drove up and stole the camera. So, I mean, if something can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. And I think that producers, especially executive producers or line producers who manage the production, you know, their job is to minimize craziness because there's always going to be something. However, I mean, look, you know, I don't think we know what went wrong with these films. I think it's just a question of we, the audiences, see them and we feel something is not working. And, you know, our job as filmmakers, as critics, is to just tell people what we see. So I think that's what I thought of Gladiator 2. That's what you thought of Pushpa 2. And you're right. I think that today we're witnessing something that is truly interesting. Films are, I often say, I could be wrong, one of like sort of the last bastions of true democracy. And what I mean by that is this, is that you vote for your films. And you vote simply by going or not going. And the box office becomes the election results, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the most important thing is, you know, if these films are successful, we'll see a third or a fourth version of them. But if they're not, we won't, right? And I think that's sort of the very exciting thing about films is that people really still can elect to go or not, you know what I mean? So Gladiator 2, check it out if you need to. Pushpa 2, you can give a miss according to Mr. Prakash. Yeah. Okay. So listen, this has been a lot of fun. This is our first iteration of this experience where we're just talking about films, filmmaking, things you've watched, things I've watched, and just kind of giving our thoughts on it. It's been really, really fun to do this, and I think we'll sit down again and do it another time.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you for having me.
All right, you did a great job. You wouldn't know it, but you know, everybody, he was a little bit nervous, but you did a great job. And I mean, I think that you shed a lot of light on the films in a way that people need to hear, need to see. So let's get back at it, okay? Thanks, Prakash. It was great to have you.
Thanks.
All right.
Same here.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Bye.